Over the course of preparing a meal for my in-laws, the father of my husband seized my plate and remarked, "You chowed down once you've surprised the men I got to feed." I looked at him, stunned, but my spouse merely shook his head in disapproval. "It's tradition," he whispered, as if that excused it. The day I invited people to a meal, their arrival was completely unanticipated. Yet somehow, they understood my emotions to a T. My spouse, Richard, and I were wed. After 3 years, I still wouldn't call it a bummer of a marriage, but I had begun to see minimal cracks issues. I found unsatisfactory. He didn't engage in harsh or cruel behavior, but he occasionally appeared to be someone else. While home with his family, Richard's father, Paul, was a man from the past, a man in charge. His mom, Carol, was peaceful and quiet, while his brother never dared to confront Paul. Mark was virtually a replica of their father, very vocal, very biased, and quite convinced that girls and women needed to understand their roles. The wife of my brother-in-law, Anna, was lovely, but she always appeared anxious and on edge, like she was waiting to be told to be quiet. I was raised differently by my parents. They instilled in me the value of respect as I grew up. In both senses, a marriage is an alliance, where a woman isn't just a fixture in the background. I understood that yes, we are here to support our husbands, but Richard's family held on to a few vintage concepts. I reasoned with myself, as long as he wasn't like them, it didn't matter. I was wrong. No special events were planned for that Saturday. It was just a festive meal, or maybe simply a casual dinner at home. I had dedicated the entire day to our house, preparing food not because I had to, but because I enjoyed cooking. I loved filling a house with a cozy and inviting atmosphere. I really aspired to make a good impression on them. I made a potato and chicken mash dish, with greens, cornmeal, and collards, the works. I presented things in a stunning manner, arranged the table with candles, and felt pleased with the way everything turned out. Upon their arrival, everyone exchanged the usual greetings. Then Paul made a remark about Richard's past affair with a woman named Lou, disguised as a compliment toward me for taming him. I grinned through it, even though it made me uncomfortable. I set the plates on the table as we took our seats, placing them one by one, finally putting the last plate in front of my own chair. Just as I was about to sit down, I sensed a touch. Paul reached over, grabbed my plate, hoisted it directly above my head, and handed it to Mark. "Eat," he said, speaking to the men as though they were royalty. Outlandishly clear, I stood motionless. At first, I thought he was joking. Who the hell says it wasn't a joke? This was the year 2012, but I felt like I had fallen into a time warp. I peeked around the corner. Mark had already begun to eat. Carol sat unmoved as ever, staring at her dish. Anna looked uneasy but tried to maintain composure. My husband, Richard, sat down beside me and gave me an expression that wasn't embarrassment, astonishment, or even fury. No. It was a look that begged me not to stage an incident. Then, very softly, he murmured, "It's tradition. I wasn't brought up to be someone's afterthought." I had no intention of remaining seated while I waited for approval to eat in the comfort of my own home. But I knew that if I lost it right there, I wouldn't be taken seriously. So I went ahead and sat. As bad as it felt, I said nothing. Even as they ate, they continued to use stone-faced silence. I refrained from picking up another dish or putting my hands on the meal I had cooked for hours. I just sat and watched. When Mark said something that made Richard laugh, I saw Paul eat more than he needed. Carol remained quiet as always, and Anna looked like she'd lived that moment 1,000 times. I let my fury build. I began formulating a plan. The next morning, I rose early and mailed out invitations. I told Richard the first wanted to treat his family to another Sunday dinner. He gazed at me in astonishment. "Last time, weren't you? Rather quiet?" I grinned. "All I need is to show your family how much they mean to me. Have you ever had to keep your cool until just the right moment? Sometimes, silence is the seed of the boldest plan. Just because you don't react in the moment doesn't mean you've accepted defeat. The following Sunday, I spared no expense. Scalloped shrimp with garlic butter, prime rib, seasoned rice, roasted potatoes, handmade bread. I even made asparagus so perfect, it could have won an award. You know that kind of dish, the kind that gets people talking, that makes mouths water just from the smell. By the time they arrived, the house was filled with the rich aroma of butter and roasted garlic. The table was exquisitely arranged, and lunch was served piping hot. As expected, the men sat down first just like last time, forks in hand. But this time, I rose from my seat, walked over to them, and one by one, I removed the plates from in front of them. I turned and handed the plates now full of hot food to the women. Carol, Anna, myself. Then, with a calm, steady tone that mirrored Paul's from the week before, I said, "You eat after the ladies eat." The silence was immediate and thick. Mark's mouth tightened. Paul looked stunned, like I'd grown two heads. Richard glanced over his shoulder, not quite sure what to do. I picked up my knife and fork, smiled, and took a slow, deliberate bite. Paul finally spoke. "This is not how we do things at the table." Mark chewed, swallowed, and gave a crooked grin, as though trying to make light of the moment. "You're making a fool of yourself." I nodded. Last week, Anna, who's always calm and gentle, let out a small chuckle. Anna coughed quickly, trying to hide her reaction, but I caught the glimmer in her eye. She was connecting the dots, and for the first time, she looked directly at her husband. Carol picked up her fork as Paul looked on in disbelief. She was clearly hesitant, but she did it, and I continued to eat, calmly. The men remained seated, looking both uneasy and hungry, entirely at a loss. As I neared the end of my meal, I leaned back, dabbed the corners of my mouth with a napkin, and said, "Since the ladies did the cooking, the guys can wait for the food." Paul's face went red. Mark forced a laugh, muttering, "We were just joking last week," but I didn't move to clean plates or play the accommodating housewife. I saw Richard pause, glance at me, then at his dad. Paul sighed, stood up, and began collecting dishes. Slowly, almost awkwardly. And with that small shift, the power dynamic in the room changed. That night, long after everyone had left, Richard found me sitting on the kitchen counter. He said nothing. His plate from dinner was still untouched. He sipped his drink, staring at it like it had betrayed him. After a long silence, he finally spoke. "You arched your eyebrow at supper." "Did I?" I replied softly. "Were you trying to be funny? Trying to make people laugh?" he asked. I shook my head. "I embarrassed your dad, didn't I? Or did I just show him what it feels like?" Richard clenched his jaw. "I don't get it. Why make it into a thing?" I slammed my hand on the counter. "That's rich when your dad did it. It was fine. But when I do the same thing, it's a concern?" The conversation took a turn. "That's just how he is," Richard muttered. "That's how Mom lets him be. That's how Mark treats Anna. That's how they were raised." I recoiled. "And that's what he's teaching his sons to be, just like him." I lowered my voice. "Richard, the first am your wife, your partner. I'm not going to be patient and wait my turn like I'm less than." He rubbed his temples. "You're turning this into a crusade." I stepped closer, my voice calm but firm. "Maybe it has to be. Maybe it's finally time someone said something." The next morning, my phone rang. It was Anna. Her voice was quiet, trembling. "Can we talk?" I slipped out of bed without waking Richard and went downstairs. "I just wanted to say thank you," Anna said. "Last night, the way you stood up, you made me realize I'm not crazy, that what I've been feeling all these years is real." I sat at the kitchen table. "Anna, how bad is it?" She let out a shaky breath. Mark's never hit me, but he talks down to me, cuts me off, tells me how to dress, who I can see, and if I ever object, I'm being emotional or out of control. His dad always backs him up. I clenched my fists. When I express frustration, he just says I'm making it up, or I'm trying to make him look bad. But I'm not. Her voice trembled. I listened as Anna described a life of slow suffocation, invisible chains, and when she said, I'd like to practice saying no, I nodded silently, even though she couldn't see me. Just no, I said gently. You deserve more. You're not alone. I heard the tiniest bit of strength in her voice when she replied, I think something changed last night. Have you ever witnessed someone finally find their voice? Sometimes, one small act of defiance can ignite someone else's courage. Empowerment is contagious, especially when someone dares to go first. 2 days later, while I was at work, my phone started ringing. I glanced down and saw the name, Paul. I hesitated for just a second before answering. Hello? You think you're clever, don't you? His voice hit me like a cold slap. I sighed. If this is about the dinner, Paul, this is about my son. He cut me off. You embarrassed him in front of his family. You've been putting ideas in his wife's head. You've poisoned him from the day you married him. I stayed silent, letting him finish. You expected respect? Dignity? Stop acting like a fool. I could almost see the sneer on his face through the phone. I raised my son better than this, and I can see the kind of woman you are. You want power, not partnership. You want to weaken him into some soft excuse of a man. I took a deep breath and responded calmly. If you truly believe your son is weak, maybe you should ask yourself who made him that way. There was silence on the line. Then came the mocking laugh. Feel like you've won something? No, I said softly. Well, let me tell you something, sweetheart, he snarled. A woman who challenges her husband's family never stays married long. I sat there staring at my screen long after he hung up. My heart was pounding, but not from fear. I was angry, furious. Paul had dismissed me, like some loud little girl who needed to be put in her place. He thought this was just a squabble, but it wasn't. This wasn't just about me anymore. I was standing up for Carol, for Anna, for every woman in that family who'd ever been told to stay quiet and wait their turn. Now it was Paul's turn to feel what it was like to be on the outside, looking in. His threat played over in my mind for the rest of the day. A woman who challenges her husband's family never stays married long. It wasn't just a threat. It was a promise, and I had no doubt what Paul had in mind. He wanted Richard to come back to him, to abandon me, and to realize that his wife had gotten out of line. He wanted his son to stay loud, proud, and in control, but I had no plans of going anywhere. In the week that followed, I noticed a subtle change in Richard. He wasn't defensive, but he was distant, quiet. It was like he didn't want to fight, but he also didn't want to acknowledge what had happened. The dinner incident was off limits. He never brought it up. Still, small things began to shift. Whenever I spoke to Anna on the phone, Richard would pause what he was doing and just listen. Sometimes he'd speak up. Dad didn't mean it that way, he muttered once. He's just old school. Another night, as we were getting ready for bed, he sighed and said, People like him don't change. I looked at him under the soft lamplight. Maybe not, but that doesn't mean we have to be like them, he groaned. You think you can handle this a better way? I smiled. I already am. He didn't say anything. He just looked at me tired, uncertain, and nodded. But his voice took on a sharper edge. That's just how my family works. His words curled in my stomach like a knot. I met his gaze and asked, Is that what I signed up for? To be treated like I'm less? Like I'm lucky to be here? He moaned and rubbed his temples. God, you always do this. You always make it deeper than it needs to be. I stepped away, No, Richard. Your family made it deeper the moment they decided respect was optional. We didn't fight that night, but we didn't really sleep either. A few days later, Anna called again, only this time she wasn't teary. She was angry. I'm sick of this, she said bluntly. I sat up straight. What happened? He found the brochures. Her voice shook. What brochures? I asked. I talked to a lawyer, she admitted, just to ask questions, just to consider my options. I hid the paperwork in my bag. He went through it. My heart dropped. What did he do? I don't know what happened last night, but this morning he went off on me, said I was trying to destroy him, said I was embarrassing him. He took my phone and said I wasn't allowed to leave. I held my breath. Did he hurt you? There was a pause. Not yet, she whispered, but I think that's all I needed to hear. I didn't hesitate. You need to go. Now. Pack a bag, get in your car, and drive here. Don't wait for permission. Don't wait for him to calm down. There was a long silence. What if I can't? What if I freeze up? You come anyway, I said firmly. I'll be waiting. The moment we ended the call, I started preparing. I unfolded fresh bedding. I opened the guest room. I laid out extra toiletries and made sure everything was ready for her. Just as I was about to call her back, Richard entered the kitchen. Hey, he said. I dropped my keys somewhere. I froze. Before, I never would have lied to him. But this wasn't about him. This was about Anna. I forced a smile. Girl talk. Nothing serious. He stared at me a beat too long suspicious, maybe, but didn't say a word. And my stomach twisted, because we both knew something had changed. 3 hours later, Anna arrived. Her hands were trembling as she dragged her bag through the front door. Tears streaked her cheeks, and her voice was barely above a whisper as she fell into my arms. You're safe now, I murmured, holding her tightly. She nodded against my shoulder, still shaking. I didn't have all the answers, but I had a plan. And more importantly, I had her. Have you ever helped someone escape a life they couldn't walk away from alone? Sometimes, just being the person who says, "Come here," can change everything. Courage isn't always loud. Sometimes, it's found in the quiet act of offering someone a way out and meaning it. That evening, just as Anna was heading to bed, her phone buzzed. She glanced at the screen, her face going pale. It was Mark. One gently took the phone from her and silenced it. Moments later, Richard's phone began to ring too. We both froze at the sound of voices outside. Anna peeked through the blinds, and there he was, Mark, standing in our driveway like he belonged there. Paul wasn't far behind him. I felt a cold shiver creep down my spine. They knew. They didn't care. Paul and Mark weren't here to talk. They were here to reclaim what they thought they still controlled. They stood under the porch light, casting long shadows across the driveway. Anna was trembling beside me, gripping the fabric of her shirt like it was the only thing holding her together. Then another buzz, another call. Mark again. Then a text. Come out now. I turned to her and said gently, You don't have to do this. You don't owe them anything. She swallowed hard. If I don't go out there, he'll just keep coming. That's when Richard entered the room, still holding his ringing phone. He looked at Anna, then at me, his face twisted with realization. You knew. I didn't answer. He scoffed. Jesus Christ. You went behind my back. You didn't even tell me. I clenched my jaw because I knew you'd try to stop me. Richard's nostrils flared. Mark is my brother. You don't think I should have had a say in this? Your brother is terrifying his wife so badly, she had to run in the middle of the night. I snapped. Do you really think I care about how that makes you feel right now? He didn't answer, because we both knew the truth. Then came the knock. Harder this time. Anna? Mark's voice called through the door, disturbingly calm. Come outside, babe. Let's talk. Anna shrank back, shaking her head. Paul's voice came next. You're embarrassing yourself, girl, and embarrassing this family. You don't walk out of a marriage. I turned to Richard, fire in my chest. Are you going to let them do this in our home? He looked torn. Then, without a word, he walked to the door. Richard, I warned, but he opened it anyway. Mark and Paul stepped inside like they owned the place. Anna flinched as Mark walked toward her. You're being crazy, he said, voice almost tender. Come home. Let's talk like adults. But I saw it. The way his fingers twitched at his sides, the way his eyes darted toward Paul, looking for approval. He wasn't here to talk. He was here to dominate. Anna shook her head. No. Mark's face hardened. No? He echoed. Her voice trembled, but she held firm. I'm not coming back with you. Mark exhaled sharply, trying to keep himself composed. He turned to Richard. Tell her she's being ridiculous. Richard said nothing. Paul stepped forward, his glare now aimed at me. You did this. I crossed my arms. Damn right I did. His eyes narrowed. You're ruining this family. I let out a cold laugh. No, Paul. I'm just exposing what's already broken. He stepped closer, trying to loom over me. You have no idea what you've started. I looked him square in the eye. I didn't start anything. You did. The day you taught your sons, their wives were beneath them. The day you made your daughter-in-law feel like a prisoner in her own home. The day you decided control was the same as love. Paul's jaw clenched, his fists balled, and then Anna spoke. I'm filing for divorce. The words fell like a hammer. Mark turned to her, stunned. You don't mean that. Her lips trembled, but her voice stayed calm. I do. Paul stepped forward again, his voice dangerously low. No woman in this family gets divorced. Anna lifted her chin. Then I guess I'm not part of this family anymore. That was it. The power shifted in the room. Paul couldn't believe what was happening. His grip on the family, his legacy was slipping. Mark looked like he'd been punched in the stomach. And Richard, he looked like something had just cracked open inside him. Like, for the first time, he was seeing his father for who he really was. Paul turned to him, desperate. Get in the car. Richard narrowed his eyes. No. Paul's voice was sharp and desperate. I won't let this woman poison you. My heart raced. For a terrifying second, I thought Richard might actually listen. But then I saw it. The moment he stood tall. Listen, Dad, he said firmly. I'm not going with you. Don't be stupid, Paul snapped. If you leave now, you're done. You're out. Richard took a deep breath, looked at me and said, Then I'll be out with my wife. Paul erupted, shouting. Mark stood frozen, unsure of what to do. And Anna? She stood quietly, holding herself upright, tears gone. Paul and Mark finally turned and left. The door slammed behind them. Silence settled over the house. Anna's sobbing had stopped, and Richard sat down next to me on the kitchen floor, his face pale. I'm confused, he admitted. I thought I knew them, but I didn't. I leaned my head on his shoulder. You just saw the truth, that's all. Eventually, Anna filed for divorce. She got her own apartment, started therapy, and found a job. For the first time in years, she smiled freely. Carol left Paul too, quietly packed a bag and vanished one evening. When I last spoke to her, she was in a small rented room in another town, rediscovering her life. Richard struggled sometimes. He nearly called his father on bad days, but he didn't. He chose me. He chose us. And one night, long after it was all behind us, he whispered, I get it now. I didn't before, but I do now. And I realized that was the real victory. Not revenge, but freedom. For all of us. At its heart, this story is about courage, the kind that doesn't come with shouting, but with quiet, determined choices. It reminds us that strength isn't always about fighting back in the moment. Sometimes it's about standing your ground when it would be easier to stay silent. For many women, especially in generations past, silence was expected, respect was demanded, but rarely returned. This story sheds light on how deeply rooted family roles can be and how hard it is to challenge them. But it also shows us something powerful. It's never too late to reclaim your voice, to say enough, and to draw a line between love and control. Change doesn't always come with drama. It can begin with a single plate, a single sentence, a single choice. And when one woman stands up, it can give others the strength to do the same. Whether you've lived through similar moments or simply recognize the courage it takes, we hope this story left you thinking about the importance of boundaries, dignity, and self-worth. We'd love to hear your thoughts. Was there a moment that truly resonated with you? Comment below, and let's keep the conversation going.